Coming every Tuesday night in March at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live. It's the Bible is Black History Institute. This year's theme is Great Women of the Bible, Black women who shaped our biblical faith. We will study Eve, Deborah, Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, along with Vashti, Esther, and Lydia. We will study from Dr. Theron Williams' latest book, Great Women of the Bible, Contemporary Conversations. To order your copy and for more information about the Bible is Black History Institute 2021, visit our website, BibleIsBlackHistory.com. We welcome you to the Bible is Black History Institute. And now, founder and president, Dr. Theron D. Williams.
Thank you so much for coming and for streaming live with us at our Bible is Black History Institute 2021. This is our third annual. And of course, because of the COVID crisis, we have to stream to you live via Facebook. Thank you for participating and thank you for showing up. Our theme this year for the Bible is Black History Institute is Great Women of the Bible. And it is based upon my latest book, Great Women of the Bible, Contemporary Conversations, where we deal with 7 wonderful women of the Bible. And of course, these were women of color as they lay the foundation to our biblical heritage. And so we are excited about what's happening this month. And for those of you who have been tuning in, the response has been overwhelming, and I thank God for you. And if you have comments, you can send them to our website, BibleIsBlackHistory.com. You can even include your comments as you stream along, as you follow along with the conversation. Tonight, we're going to be looking at Lydia. Lydia was a tremendous woman. She was the first European convert that Paul ever made. She is the first one. And she is a businesswoman. And after she met Christ through the proclamation of the Apostle Paul, she committed her life to Christ. And as a businesswoman, she committed her business and her life to the Lord Jesus Christ. Her working in business became her spiritual practice. And so she was able to transform a secular business into a spiritual engagement. And that's one of the things that Lydia teaches us. She is a tremendous woman, and we thank God for her. And the discussion tonight is going to be led by Deidre Gray. She is a graduate of Indiana Wesleyan. She is now studying at the Christian Theological Seminary, working on her Master of Divinity degree. She is a member of the Eastern Star Church. She is a praise and worship leader at the Eastern Star Church, and she is going to be our discussion leader. It's an awesome discussion. Lean forward and be blessed by this discussion.
Good evening and welcome to the Great Women of the Bible Contemporary Conversations on Lydia, as inspired by the book of the same title, written by author, senior pastor, president, and founder of the Bible is Black History Institute, Dr. Theron D. Williams. I am your virtual moderator, Ms. Deidre D. Gray, servant leader of Kingdom Solution LLC, and I also serve in ministry at Eastern Star Church under the leadership of Senior Pastor Jeffrey A. Johnson Sr. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to some and present to others these dynamic individuals that I refer to affectionately as Team Lydia. Our virtual guest panel of modern day Lydias, and also by Dr. Williams' book design, a representative of the men that celebrate, love, and serve with them. So I would like to begin with Reverend Simone Walls. Hello, ma'am. How are you this evening?
I am doing well. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all this evening.
Thank you. Reverend Walls is an ordained deacon, ordained elder at Jones AME Zion Church under the leadership of Reverend Harry Spigner. She is a life coach at the Excel Center and a member of Call and Response, which is a faith-based activism group. And she is the owner and photographer of Cheval Photography. And she is a mother and a community leader, and she also is a Chicago native, and she is in pursuit of her Master's of Divinity at Christian Theological Seminary. So everybody welcome Reverend Simone Walls. Next we have Miss Hazel Owens. Hello, Miss Hazel. How are you this evening?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Ms. Hazel is associate pastor at Common Ground Christian Church under the leadership of Pastor Jeff Kay, and she is a minister, faithful anointed minister at Eastern Star Church as well under the leadership of Senior Pastor Jeffrey A. Johnson Sr., and she is a pre-licensed marriage and family therapy resident at the Christian Theological Seminary Counseling Center. So again, welcome, Ms. Hazel Owens. Next, we have Miss Tammy Renee Butler. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing well, blessed and highly favored.
Thank you for being here, my sister, my soror, and friend. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to the Deltas. So thank you. Miss Tammy Renee Butler is the pastor of the House of God Church, Indianapolis. She is the co-owner and managing principal of Engaging Solution LLC. So we welcome Pastor Tammy Renee Butler. And representing for the brothers on tonight, we want to welcome the entrepreneur extraordinaire. The brother is just, listen, Minister Kenneth Allen, how are you, sir? Nice to have you.
It's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I am doing blessed and favored by his grace.
Sir, yes, you are. We thank you so much for being here. Minister Kenneth Allen serves as the youth pastor at First Baptist Church, North Indianapolis, under the leadership of Dr. Ivan Douglas Hicks, senior pastor. He's the commissioner with the Indianapolis Public Schools, chairman of the Indiana Commission on the Social Status of Black Males, managing partner of the Grindery, and church loan specialist for Griffin Church Loans. And we thank God for his presence on tonight to lend a male perspective to Lydia as a Christian businesswoman, believer, and a history maker in her own right. So we thank you, sir, for your male representation and perspective on tonight as a man of God and an entrepreneur. Thank you for being here. And now I want to take the time to jump into our overview and get into our discussion on tonight. So our Bible is Black History Institute charge, as set forth by Dr. Williams on this evening, is to encourage women to appreciate every facet of their lives as a spiritual practice. That is to allow every engagement in life, whether it is their jobs, motherhood, marriages, dating, educational pursuits, to be used as a means for spiritual growth and divine glorification. So as a subject matter, our scripture reference was Acts 16. It was based on Lydia, and she was considered a leader of the local prayer house in Macedonia, Philippi. She is recorded in the Bible as a dealer of purple cloth, one who sold dyed purple cloth. She was originally from Thyatira, a small region in a place called Lydia. So by ethnic identification or nickname, she was a Lydian woman. So therefore, she was referenced as Lydia. She was known for her hometown, Thyatira was known for their many guilds, the Dyers Guild as the most popular. So after learning her trade, establishing her business, she relocates to Philippi, and there the stage is set for this the providential encounter with Pastor Paul, as we call him. And so at that time, Luke identified her by her craft, suggesting that she was successful. She used her resources to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. She was known for her hospitality and support and partnership in Paul's missionary work. And her distinction is that she was Paul's first European Christian convert from Judaism, and therefore first European Christian businesswoman. Luke connects her rich religious fervor, as stated and shared in Dr. Williams' book, her religious fervor to her occupation as a merchant, and her vocation as Paul's partner in ministry merged into one. She freely availed her home as well as her resources to help underwrite Paul's missionary work, and this may have transformed how she understood her role as a merchant. Now, parts of her proceeds went towards funding God's work, which would have made her occupation a spiritual practice. And that serves as some of the context, and we'll jump in it together more as we go forth in our discussion on tonight. But hopefully that sets context to the chapter and to the subject matter in the person of Lydia. So with that all said and the stage set, who would like to jump in first to just kind of piggyback, if you will, or provide your perspective or your first impression and interaction with the book?
My initial reaction in general after reading this, and I kind of shared this with you offline, sis, is that Lydia blessed me, right? She just blessed me. I have turned every facet of my life into a spiritual practice. Everything that I do is a ministry, and she has basically given me kind of that, she's given me an example of how I can explain that to others. So before we get too deep into it, just kind of, just touching, just raising it, I want to lift up Lydia in general, and her story and her example is very much so an affirmation of my own life.
And let me give a working definition as Dr. Williams presented in the book with your reference to spiritual practice and already confirming that you see it as such in your own life. Dr. Williams states in his book that an event or activity becomes a spiritual practice when through them God can be glorified and spiritual development is experienced. Our connection to God, while greatly appreciated by church, should not be restricted to the church context. So on that note, as a spiritual practice, as Ms. Simone has established that she already recognizes her occupation as such and does not compartmentalize her life, but that everything she is and who she is a spiritual practice. That aligns with Dr. Williams' book. Who would like to speak further in that regard?
Similarly to Simone, I was just in awe of Lydia. Like, how when you read something and you read it again and it hits you differently that second, third, fourth time around. And that's what happened here. Like, when you gave us the chapter, I'm like, yeah, I know about Lydia. Yeah, it's cool. But then reading it again, I was like, oh man, she's so dope. She's so dope. And what I loved about her in particular is her fearlessness of worshiping a God that is countercultural to what she's been accustomed to, and her unorthodoxy of what it means to be a woman in biblical times. And that, just as a single woman knocking on 40 with no kids, no husband, and trying to handle her business, that was very inspiring for me. And this time around, it hit different, as the young folks say. It just hit me different. So and like Simone, I like to see my work as a spiritual practice, that my ministry is, and everything that I do is ministry, and it may not always be in the four walls of the church, and that's okay too.
That's it. That's good. Tammy?
Yeah, I would. I definitely echo the sentiments that have been shared. And Lydia, when I was reading through what was written by Dr. Williams, it just kept coming to mind that she was an asset and not a liability. She was a lender, not a borrower. And I think that is what is so important, because a lot of times when they think about women and their roles as being defined by society, but she had it together. I mean, she had her property. She was making her investments. She left one place to go to another to be able to establish her business. So she learned where she was able to understand the craft and then apply it and expand it. And I was just really inspired. And then also how she utilized her resources to then be able to help the ministry. And so when you think about the fact of any of us that have been a part of a seed plant of a ministry getting started, and what it takes for that to happen, and oftentimes, the men are laboring and the but here it was a woman that stepped up and said, hey, I can make this easy for you. I have a place where you can live. You don't have to worry about working at the same time that you're trying to go out and build the ministry and feed the people. And so she was able to contribute in a way because she was established. She was an asset. She was able to lend to them and really be able to understand the principles of money and business, and being able to build something that then becomes fruit for others to be able to take those seeds and replant them.
Yes,
so I enjoyed it. And that she opened her heart. She opened her heart to the presence of God. It was foreign to her, but she was willing, even when the men that were there were not necessarily willing to do the same, and even trying to figure out 10 men to be able to come together to be able to open the synagogue. But she was willing to open herself and get into the presence of God. And even in several different iterations, they talk about her being a God worshiper, is what she actually transitioned to.
Now, what just happened, for those that are watching? You are experiencing a shift. We are past formalities and introductions, because you can't get all these preachers in a room and not have a shift. You know where we're going with this. So come on, set the atmosphere and speak to it, because all of that is Bible. Everything everybody just mentioned is saying is Bible. We're shifting, and Bible is Black history. So again, I love how Dr. Williams is highlighting and celebrating these great women in the Bible. And again, as I had referenced earlier, as we were preparing, that Lydia is in the lineup, because we hear, you probably looked in the context, in the contents, the table of content, and you noticed and the other names were familiar. But for him to be able to expound on a couple verses and lift so many principles and put the spotlight on Lydia, and for it to resonate with us, I think he did an amazing job with it. And I love, again, when you set this content and you put it in the context of Acts 16. Hopefully we're gonna have time to go there with that. So I'm gonna let that just marinate for a minute, because this is where I want Minister Kenneth Allen to jump in and share with us from that male perspective. For those of you who know or may not know, in the book, Dr. Williams has his target audience obviously is women, but it's not limited to women. He wanted this to also be a resource to men as well, to provide them with insight, to provide them and guide them in a spirit of celebration and information to the great women in the Bible, because they are often voiceless or limited in their voice. And so it's great that he also recognized that this is a resource for the brothers as well to read and reflect. And so he has a set of reflection questions for each chapter, set and designed for the target audience of the women, but he also specifically has designated for reflection questions for the men. And so with that, Brother Kenneth, would you speak to what was your reaction, your reflection when you read about Lydia particularly with, let me set it up, and I don't want to go too far because I want you to jump into it, but that Philippi, as Dr. Williams described, was a sexist culture. And it spoke to that there was a lack of spiritual fortitude amongst the men there. That in Jewish tradition, there it was required that you had to have at least 10 men to be able to establish a synagogue, and they lacked that amongst the Jewish men that were there. But even it was a less interest to the Gentiles in that area. So that's why Lydia and these women are even in the equation, because they established the prayer house. And I want you to go ahead and speak to one of the questions, Brother Kenneth, where Dr. William poses and said, do you think it is significant that a man appeared to Paul in a vision and said, come over into Macedonia and help us, which was referenced in Acts 16:6-10, and that the first person he met and ministered to was a woman called Lydia?
Yes, absolutely. I'm on fire already just listening to the introductory comments. But I like, I had similar experience to Reverend Owens. When I read it, I'm like, okay, I know about Lydia, but the Holy Spirit arrested me when I read it again. Lydia was a bad woman to be doing what she was doing in her day and time. She was a businesswoman. She had her own crib. She was a woman of faith. And even in the midst of everything going on, she still believed. And so if we were to look at her today, she would be the Martha Stewart, the Oprah. She would have had tons of followers on her Instagram channel or her YouTube channel. And I'm a firm believer that men traditionally have always given orders. But when you want order, you need a woman. And I think about so many women in the Bible who we didn't know their name, but we knew Lydia's name. So that's what really caught my attention, because you could name the list of the unnamed women. But when you get to this particular passage of scripture and you actually hear her name, that raises her profile, that she must have really been doing her thing. So yes, I was surprised that the first person that they met was a woman, but I wasn't too surprised, because I know that if you want to get something done, you need a woman.
Again, that's what resonated with me about Lydia. I mean, I remember growing up and you know, as you don't even really hear it touched on or preached, if you will, because a lot of times what you hear preached, and this is segueing or on the same, you know, on the level that we're on in Acts 16, this is the same chapter. What you often hear preached is the part about the young lady who was being used by the men, and she was being used as a business to make money for them. That's what you oftentimes hear preached more than not. And how then Paul rebuked them, and then we always hear the passage of Paul and Silas in prison. And so we always hear that part of chapter 16, but not often do we hear about Lydia, who was a woman with a business, who took her resources to be able to support the ministry and support men in ministry, to partner with them and not be abused by them. And then God entrusted her with resources to advance the kingdom. So we don't talk about that. And so I want to know if that resonated or lifted up out of the text or the book as you all were reading it as well, because that was one of the texts for me. Because we know that the Bible, you know, was a patriarchal society and culture. And since this is a contemporary conversation, let's fast forward to 2021. So let's talk about it in that context.
Fact of the matter is, like Brother Kenneth said, at the end of the day, for Lydia to be doing what she was doing in her day and time, not only was it unheard of, but it was risque. It was literally, it literally would put her life in danger, right? Here come Paul and, you know, and his folks, and they talking about, you know, I need to do some ministry here, right? She spoke to the men. First of all, these strange men, talking to men in and of itself in that day and time is dangerous. Then not only that, sis was like, y'all can stay with me. So you've invited foreign men into your home, which in turn you potentially invite scandal. You're inviting scandal that could ruin your reputation and your business. And you're already a woman. So I mean, just all that intertwined. It was so. She was a God. She was a worshiper, right? But it seemed, and she moved about as if that's the only thing she did fear. The only thing she did fear was God, and that for me, that seemed like that is what made her put one foot in front of the other and make her kind of navigate the world the way she did. So she was also very, very inspirational to me in that. And I don't know if the vision that Paul had, whether it be from a man or not, really mattered, because for me, when you look into the interpretation of dreams like that, if I think when you have visions of people who are pleading for help, that just means that you need to take action, and there's something for you to do in this place. So I'm thankful that Paul listened, and I'm even more thankful that Lydia was there to be the co-founder of the Church of Christ, and because at the end of the day, she was that was Paul's ministry partner. That was the partner. And had it not been for Lydia, we may have to be talking about some other things right now. Lydia was a catalyst for the Church of Christ. And I am so thankful for her life.
Simone mentioned that the vision of the man, right? And I'm with Simone. It didn't really matter to me that much. However, I looked that word up in the Hebrew, the man there, it's husband. And I just found that really interesting, that there's not a mention of her having a husband. And so I do think, like Simone, does it really matter? The fact is that he moved on the vision, right? But it's just really interesting how, it maybe I'm glad that he wasn't just looking for a man or someone's husband, and her husband's never, if she had one, he's never mentioned. And so it lets me believe, did she even have one, right? And I don't think she did. So the fact that she had her own, regardless of what her marital situation was like, whether she was a widow, whether she was married and not anymore, or whether she, was just on her own, the fact is that she was able to thrive in a time where it would have been risky. She could have been killed. And she did her thing with it. And so I did find that interesting, that man in that part of the text meant husband, and I got to sit with that a little bit, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So
one of the things that I thought was really interesting is really when you talk about the fact that the women, it said, emitted a spiritual vibration, is what was stated. And there was a spiritual presence that came. And when you think about the fact of seeds that we're able to plant and how we can actually create the rhythm, and that's really what Lydia did. She created the rhythm. And so when you think about, like you were talking about in Acts 16, you have another woman that has a struggle that is occurring. And because she's in that struggle and hasn't experienced the fullness of God, and Lydia is at a place as a God worshiper that is able to emit spiritual vibration. She is able to, when she enters, before she enters, you feel the presence of the Lord. You know that there's something unique about her. You know that there's something different about her. And when we think about how we should operate in the marketplace, where sometimes even before people know that you're a child of God, they feel your light. They see your joy. They experience your presence. They experience the newness of life just through an encounter with you, which is the same thing that we experienced when we had an encounter with him. And so it's just very interesting how Lydia is able to really exemplify the glory of God in every aspect what she's doing, even in the hospitality that she rendered unto them when they came. I agree with Simone. It was like, okay, she didn't even know these men and she's inviting them into her home. But why? Because she was walking in the spirit. She wasn't thinking in the flesh. So when you're thinking in the flesh, you're thinking something else. But she knew that they were on a mission. Why did she know they were on a mission? Because she was converted. She was the first convert that happened. And so she knew their assignment. And when you know that person's assignment, then you want to what? Make sure that you're a part of that, because you're a part of a divine assignment. And she made sure that she walked lockstep with that divine assignment.
Come on, Pastor Tammy.
I love Lydia. I really do.
Yes, because here's the thing. Even in that passage in Acts 16, in the New Revised Standard Version, it said in verse 15, she said, when she and her household were baptized, she urged us, saying, if you have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, not the men, not Paul or them in the flesh, but the Lord, come and stay at my home. And she prevailed upon us. Like this left, like you said, an impression upon them. Like that light was on her, the spirit, that vibration that Dr. Williams talks about was on her and this group of women who came alongside these men who came on this mission. So
and that's why I think as women, we have to be very, very careful, because when you do the comparison, then now you have another woman in the same chapter and Paul and Silas end up in jail. So it's, what is our assignment, right? Is our assignment for there to be fertile ground or for there to be captivity? So there's a difference in what occurs based on the divine assignment that we accept.
Now that's the conversation. Dr. Williams have to bring us back, because that's the conversation for another day about who you hook up with. Come on, your connections. Watch
who you hook up with, who you work for. Who you working for?
That's right. Who you working for?
Hey, come on, Brother Ken, I gotta yield to you on that, sir, in that context. Did that lift up for you in that text in chapter 16, the two different women, and they're just more so that light, the angle that we're taking on Lydia in that regard?
Well, I'm just overwhelmed with Lydia, because I know for a fact it's been said by one of the greats of our time that if God made anything better than a woman, he obviously kept it to himself. And so when you look at Lydia and her conversion and what she did once she was converged, she immediately went into ministry. What is ministry? Ministry is meeting the needs. It wasn't no hotels, wasn't no Motel 6, wasn't no Conrad. She said, come to my house, because I want to make sure y'all are taken care of so y'all can do the work of the Lord. So she utilized her resources, her income that she was getting from her business, to make sure that the man of God, that the ministry of God was able to take place. Oftentimes we get people converted into Christianity and they don't understand that it's not just, that's the starting point, not the stopping point. You have to be able to begin ministry, whether it's being an usher, whether it's preaching, whether it's teaching Sunday school. You have to begin to get in ministry, utilizing what you have. Not going to get something, but utilize the resources that God has already blessed you with to be able to glorify his name. And so I think that just really stuck with me, that she didn't have much, even though she was an entrepreneur. She was a ball and a shot caller, but she just utilized what she had to advance the kingdom of God.
That's good, because we often say in the church, use what you got. Stir up
Use what you got.
Use what you got. Stir up your gift. What the old preacher would say, what's in your hand? So So you all live two points with that I think will help us to transition, if you will, when we talk about spiritual practice and your occupation and your vocation. And to take it from there, what you said, Brother Kenneth, of let's move into this space of where Dr. Williams is emphasizing that, take your spiritual practice beyond the church walls. And don't compartmentalize it, but that it should go beyond just prayer, fasting, your spiritual disciplines, if you will, and those practices that we know as believers, but also beyond Sunday morning for those 2 hours or so, Wednesday night Bible study. But how does this translate, like with Lydia? How that was apparent that it was in every part of her life and her being and who she was in every setting, every encounter, every interaction. Speak to that, whomever would like to, about, again, how do you embrace that spiritual practice then as spiritual lifestyle? And like you said, it's not the stopping point, but the starting point of not just helping believers or new believers, be baptized, but then how to walk it out and take it with you. As we would say, you would depart to serve. So how do you help to do that? How is that present in your lives? What advice would you all give to someone viewing, saying, how then do I shape and define this spiritual, this my occupation and my other interactions and relationships to be also a part of this spiritual practice that Dr. Williams is speaking of?
So one of the things, as you started this line of question, that came up for me, that I resonate so much with Lydia on, is her gift, her skill that took time, right? To be a dyer of purple cloth, that was a very time consuming task. And once, I think it was Pastor Tammy who mentioned earlier, once she has developed that skill enough, right, and she started blossoming in that skill, she knew when it was time to move forward and relocate. But the key is that she took some time to cultivate that skill. And what that brought up for me is how important it is for us to cultivate our gifts. God has gifted each and every one of us with at least one gift. A child on Christmas Day will hurry up and unwrap their gifts. Some of us are sitting with gifts unwrapped, and if we saw a child not unwrapping a gift, we would feel sad. So some of us have gifts that we're sitting on that we won't unwrap, and that is saddening to God, and it hurts the kingdom. And so we have to unwrap our gift, embrace our gift, cultivate our gift, and then we can utilize our gift, right? And utilize it in the way that God wants us to use it, not in the way that we think we should be using it. And so when I'm a teacher, but the Lord knows that I am not gifted to teach small children the Bible, right? That's not my gifting. I love kids. I'm a family therapist. I love children. However, when it comes to teaching the gospel, that's not my area. I would do some damage, possibly, right? I may not do anything too terrible, but that's not my area. But when I go to teach a class at church or wherever, and I'm the guest to teach, everything is turned on for me. The space is clean for me. Someone with the gift of helps did that, right? And so we can't compare our gift, but we got to take the time to cultivate it. And if that means going back to school, we got Simone, who's finishing up her MDiv. I just recently graduated, did a whole career change, left the business world to walk into full-time ministry. And that meant cultivating a gift that I knew God gave me, right? And so I don't want to miss that part of Lydia as we look at her using her gift for her spiritual, as part of her spiritual discipline, is that she took time to cultivate it too.
That's good. That's good. This is where I want Simone to jump in here, because as Minister Hazel was making that mention about a teacher and youth, you are by profession too a life coach for the Excel Center, a guidance counselor, academic advisor, a teacher. You are also a self-described single Black dope mother of 3, who you call your beautifully God-crafted gifts. And I want to circle back. That's why I want to segue to Sister Simone, because you started out the gate saying spiritual practice is your way of life. Like it embraces who you are, what in everything that you do, whenever you are present, whatever capacity or context of a room you step in, you made it known exactly what Dr. Williams was talking about, that spiritual practice as spiritual lifestyle. So when you I see the wheels turning with you. When you and that's why I want you to jump in and I want you to speak about that, because it makes you remind me of what Williams talked about when he used the example of Brother Lawrence of France. And he was talking about practicing the presence of God. He wanted to give context to that to the viewers in the book. This was a person who was denied the priesthood because of his lack of education and preparation. And so he became a lay servant. And God would have it that visitors from near and far would come and seek counsel from the lowly kitchen worker because of his deep peace, unspeakable joy, and his ability to practice the presence of God in all of life's situations. He appreciates his work as spiritual practice. How do you practice the presence of God for you to affirm? And I mean, you were the first to say and communicate and convey to us, my life is a spiritual practice. So speak on that.
And I want to lift this up because we talked about the spiritual practice and turning into a lifestyle, and every experience, just understanding and being aware that that can be a God experience, and we can, that can be an encounter for somebody, and keeping that at the head of our, at the front of our minds when we're interacting with people. And not only that, just kind of remembering that our lives are sermons in itself, right? We navigate this world, and our lives are sermons. I love that God has allowed me to come into the knowledge that I had to unlearn a whole lot of stuff first, right? I had to, this embedded theology that we have, the way of church that we were kind of spoon fed, or what we know about church, or what somebody said church was for us, or what somebody said God was for us. And I think, I thank people like you, Didi. I thank my peers like Hazel, who I've come into contact with in the classroom, and to be able to go to school and to kind of unlearn some of that stuff. First of all, everybody doesn't have that opportunity, right? So, and then again, to Hazel's point, I then think once we have that knowledge, it is important for us to kind of help unwrap the gifts in others, that the gifts and the passions that we have that are God given can be used for God work. And I think that because of some of the patriarchy and things of that nature, and kind of the control and the oppression that we've experienced, a lot of the things that we love and cling to are not looked at as something that can be a spiritual practice. They can all be spiritual practices because we reach people in different ways. My business is not a business. My ministry as a photographer, the name of it is Cheval, and the Cheval is a Cheval mirror. It's that full length mirror, and it's designed so you can see yourself in totality from head to toe. And for me, that's the way God sees you. The way God sees you is the way you should be navigating through this world. I wrote a couple of weeks ago that God meant you. So, and that is you. God meant you the way, and for you to choose the you that God created. And that means walking in the things that you love and your passions. And just the only difference is that, and it's not even a difference. You glorify God when you do that, when you use it for the edification of those around you, right? I take pictures, the pictures that I take of people, and specifically Black people. I love my services really catered to Black people. Because I want to take the pictures, but people book me because of the conversations that we have, to be quite honest. And I use that as an opportunity to really kind of dismantle a lot of what we kind of face, or how people view church. And behind those closed doors and behind the camera, we have conversations about how you're beautiful just the way you are. You are beautiful just the way you are, and the things that you love. Yeah, let's put some of that into practice, and really make it something that not only that you love, but that can be a beautiful addition to society. Because again, God meant you, and you are valuable in this world.
Ooh, I love that. God meant you. Ooh, that's why I wanted you to speak on it from right there, Sister Simone, right there. Because like you said, people think they're booking you for one thing when it comes to your business, but when you understand your business is a ministry tool. And when you said like your life is a sermon, and as the saying goes, it may be the sermon, the only sermon that somebody hears, that somebody sees. And this is why that demonstration of spiritual practice in every angle and avenue of our lives is important, especially within our community and within our culture, as mothers, as fathers, as servant leaders, as ministers, as business owners, in whatever room God puts us in, whatever table He affords us to make a seat or bring a seat. Like, this is why it's important to embrace spiritual practice as a lifestyle. So since you are speaking to it, and I think Brother Lawrence of France in Dr. Williams' book is an excellent example of that practicing the presence of God, because they said that's what he had, that spiritual vibration we were talking about, and that he was pleased and at peace and had an unspeakable joy, and that's what attracted people to him, and why he could be successful in that in whatever the capacity. That goes back to what Minister Hazel said, that you think your gift is for one thing. He thought he was going into the priesthood and he was going to do, in this occupancy and this vocation and this role, and then God had him just as pleased and used him probably even greater than the priesthood as a lowly kitchen worker. And that's why you can't trip on your small beginning, or wherever God has you and whatever your role, embrace it as assignment, because it's significant, because God meant you. Oh, come on.
It may be small to you, but it's big to God,
Big
right?
to God.
And so we got to start changing our lens and our perspective on our gift and where God sends us.
That's it. That's it. And embrace the assignment, and know whatever the capacity, whatever the interaction, is not by accident. It's spiritual practice. It's assignment. Because here we have with Lydia, God was in the background and the foreground of her life. He was rerouting Paul just to get to Macedonia. Like, they were supposed to, he thought he was going to this country, this city, this way, this reroute. God sends a vision of a man, but then she ends up encountering, it's not accidental, it was providential. And like you all have spoken to, it was not by, she was prepared for the moment. So like all of the training she was going through, the education to get on, to put on, to get her on, and then to relocate, there was an obedience in that for her to end up in a whole nother city where she could have stayed in the marketplace she was in the city. That's where it was popping. Like the guild.
I was just saying, and it's a wealthy city.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes. And then here God would move her, and all because it was by design to be available for assignment and to be in that context. God always leaves faith in the equation, because you all
prepared for the purpose.
And yes, so the risk that she was running, to be a woman, to be bold, to be courageous, to have her own, to be prepared, to be a mouthpiece, to be available, and that she was on the right thing and had that spiritual vibration. I'm gonna shut up, but because y'all making me excited about Lydia, because
Lydia is babe though, for real though. But Lydia is everything.
She really is, because when I think about Lydia and Lydia's story, and like you said, being flexible, right? Being willing to follow as he leads, and sometimes not even knowing, because your relationship at that time is not necessarily where it needs to be, but you're the head of the prayer house, not knowing that what's going to happen after that, and so she was already in a place of prayer and in conversation, but she had to transition to who she was in conversation with, and that's what made the difference in her life. And I was, as you were talking, so many things came back through my mind about even my own life. And I was thinking about when I was at the University of South Carolina, getting ready to graduate, had applied to law school. I put all my eggs in one basket, didn't get accepted. I'm like, what in the world's about to happen? Okay, now what? My parents about to come for my graduation. Everybody's going to be asking what you're going to do next. I have no idea. And took a career test. Because I'm like, I got to start all the way over. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Took a career test, and it said urban planning. I had no idea, had never heard of it, what urban planning was or anything. And There were 3 schools. Ball State was one of them. Sending an application to Ball State. Fast forward the story because I know we don't have a lot of time. Fast forward the story. I get a call, Dr. Linda Keys. I remember I was laying in the middle of my mom's bed like, what am I about to do? Looking up at the ceiling, but really not knowing. I was looking up at God and he was about to come in with an answer. And sure enough, Dr. Linda Keys called. She said, I'm offering you a full scholarship, full fellowship to Ball State. When I landed, my parents drove, we packed in a 2-door green Grand Am, drove all the way here, 12 hours. They caught the Greyhound bus back. I didn't even have furniture. And the way that God just started moving, work, and it was all a part of a divine assignment. I had so when I look back over my life and think about the plan I had created versus the plan that God had for me, that's what he's looking for. Are you going to be available? Are you available unto him? Because if our actions are full-time, our activities are full-time, it will cultivate spiritual development, and spiritual practice will come, and people will be ignited by that. That's why people probably walk up to each and every one of you all and say, it's something about you. I don't know what it is. Now, what do you do? Now, who are you? Why? Because it is that practice that we have, that light, like the song we used to sing as we were little kids, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine everywhere I go. You don't even have to sing the song. People see the light. They feel the light because that vibration is there. It's there. So I love Lydia.
But Luke said a certain woman. He said a certain woman about Lydia. So that light you're talking about.
That's right.
I want to toss it to Brother Ken.
No, I think that, for those that are watching this, when you look at Lydia and after her conversion and how she immediately begins service to ministry, many people are watching this and don't know what their gift is, what their calling is. But I take it in Matthew 25, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick, those that are in prison. All of us have something in us that God has designed us to do. And if we don't do it, it won't get done. I'll close it like this. My mother was an educator in Gary Public Schools for 36 years. And one day she had gave her children a free day. All y'all remember what a free day was. That's when you could just do whatever you wanted to do. Don't make too much noise. Don't get in trouble. And so they were just drawing on their papers. And so she was going down a room, going around the room just to make sure they were not drawing anything inappropriate. And she came by this little gentleman's name by the name of Timothy's desk. And she said, Timmy, what are you drawing? And Timmy looked at my mother as only a 6th grader could and said, I'm drawing a picture of God. Now, my mama's been saved her entire life, over the prayer meeting. And she said, baby, nobody know what a God looked like. And Timmy looked at her and said, they will when I finish my picture.
Come on. Come on here.
That's it right there.
Come on, Timothy. Yes, I love it. Let me ask you this, Brother Kenneth. As we're speaking about Lydia and again, the male perspective, how did this heighten your celebration and appreciation for women in ministry? Because we know within our culture, within our Black church experience, the theology, like Simone said, that we've been exposed to, that we need to unlearn, and the other schools of thoughts that we need to explore when it comes to Black liberation theology, womanist theology, and so forth. Like looking at this text through a different type of lens. How has this created for you, and if so, and I believe so, a different type of celebration, appreciation for Lydia when you look at her context when Dr. Williams lifts up about the lack of spiritual leadership and fortitude in Philippi, and then sending it. Would Paul have changed his mind if if that had not been a man in the vision? Would he have still gone? When you factor in all those different things that we've been talking about and we've all explored in the book, how does that resonate with you in a contemporary context as well?
Yeah, it lifts up a lot of things because I look at where we are right now as a society. I look back on the events that took place on January 6th, the insurrection, and I look at what's going to happen on tomorrow, the inauguration.
Come
And so,
on.
in the midst of an insurrection, where you have a woman who is the Speaker of the House, who folks
Black woman.
just can't handle a woman being in charge,
Come on.
knowing that on the 20th, a Black woman is about to be the first vice president of these yet to be United States of America. When you look in the middle, we just celebrated the king. What did I'm saying? Between the insurrection and inauguration, we celebrated the king. So I think it's very a good opportunity to celebrate a woman, particularly Lydia, because you think about all Lydia had to face and encounter and be successful in the midst. And still, unfortunately, to this day, women are facing some of the very same challenges, unfortunately, that Lydia faced back in biblical antiquity. And so I think that it's a great opportunity to celebrate, to lift up Black women in particular, because you all have been the backbone of our world, of our country, of our society. And I'm just honored to participate.
Thank you, sir, for that. Thank you. Because, it is amazing, and I appreciate that. And we need that affirmation from our brothers, or we welcome it. And in fact, it is necessary that, you all lend it to us and that we express it to you all as well, because we know from the beginning of the time, like you said, the backbone, in our homes as mothers, as wives, as significant others, in the boardroom, to the back room, to the church, most certainly. We've served in leadership and been in contexts where it was taboo for a woman to stand in the pulpit. Some ministries and denominations are still not free of that, like you said, to even acknowledge women as pastors, as leaders in the church. You can read the announcements, you can lead the solo, but to be, affirmed as a leader, and that you said we're still facing that. And then here we have the first Black woman, woman of color, that will be the vice president of the United States, to witness that, how do we process that as a woman, when we're sometimes not affirmed in the spaces that we are in still. So, but nevertheless, we press on. And particularly as Black women, leadership, Black women as business owners, we are some of the most educated. We lead in business and entrepreneurship as business owners. We lead in the boardroom. We lead at the polls. Black women, and so to celebrate that, the timing, thank you, sir, the timing of Dr. Williams' book as well, when we're talking about great women of the Bible and then putting that in the context of contemporary conversations. Salute to Dr. Williams. So thank you, sir. Thank you for your continuous affirmation and celebration of Black women and women of color and women in the Bible. It's believed, and Dr. Williams points this out in the book, that she may have been one of two women church leaders that Paul references in Philippians 4, 2, and 3. Churches in Macedonia were known for their generosity. They were a model for liberal giving. The church at Philippi would have been among the first churches, if not the first church of Macedonia. Paul said, "You Philippians were the only ones who gave me financial help when I first brought you the good news," and then traveled on from Macedonia. He said, "No other church did this." That's in Philippians 4 and 15, the New Living Translation. He said, "This was one of the greatest churches," Dr. Williams states in the book, "of the New Testament. And it began with a Christian businesswoman that the Bible recognizes as Lydia." So with that said, and in closing thoughts and reflections, I want to pose one of the reflection questions that Dr. Williams has here.
I do want to say, as you're locating the question you shall pose, that Lydia, this was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I honor you, Didi Sis, for even inviting all of us, and I know everybody else here feels the same. This was an absolutely amazing opportunity, a wonderful spiritual practice. But Lydia has reminded me to be bold, to be confident, and to trust in what God has given me, to further further edify and to create that beloved community that we talk about. Lydia used what she had, and when she used what she had, she became the co-founder of the Christian church in Philip. So you know what I'm saying? It's just like, lean into that which God has given you. God will, prepare that table, or your gifts make room for you. And look at what Lydia's gifts did for her. So I'm so grateful for the time that we have spent, and for the opportunity to lift up the great woman who is Lydia.
That's good. And that's right on point with the question. See, you had the answer before the question. So right with that, how do you think receiving Christ as her Savior influenced how she conducted her business affairs? Does your relationship with Christ influence how you conduct business or perform your duties on the job? If so, how? If not, why? But I think we're an if so group. So I want you all to share about that how. And I think that's a great segue, right, from what Sister Simone shared. As believers, I want you all to, as women, as Christian business owners and leaders in the marketplace, Brother Kenneth, as an influencer, as a supporter of Black women and Christian women in the marketplace, speak to someone who may be struggling as a Lydia, or give somebody some Lydian hope. If they are a new business owner, or somebody they know God has been speaking to them and telling them to start that business, or go back to school, or again, how to implement that spiritual practice in whatever capacity of their life, so that they, like Sister Simone said, can lean in to what God has designed and purposed them to be, what God meant for them to be. Let's just go around the virtual space, the virtual room, and speak a word of encouragement to somebody who may be in that space, or even affirm someone who's walking in it. And maybe as a result or impact of the pandemic, things have been a little shaky. You've been a little worried. There's some reservation or what have you. Let's just take some time to, with those, extremes in mind that may be in the audience, to encourage somebody.
So what's coming up for me, and has been coming up for me for a minute there. So this is a blend of the encouragement that you're asking us to give, and a little bit of the question that from the book. Lydia converted and immediately got to work. But even prior to that, she was worshiping God, right? So her Christianity is at the core of everything. She's anchored in it. And what that resonates for me is the importance of being anchored in the Lord. All of our gifts come from God. It's not for us to keep. It's for us to share, right? It's not by our might, it's by His. And so we have to be anchored. That spiritual practice, what kept coming up for me is a spiritual discipline. And so she faced a lot of challenges. So I can imagine there was worry. I can imagine that there was anxiety. I can imagine that there was fear even. Yet she continued in her discipline, her spiritual discipline. That can be a grounding technique to focus the mind and center the mind on what's happening in the present, to keep you grounded and anchored so that you're flowing in balance, right? We think of balance as being so static, but when we're grounded, we can flow in balance when things are happening around us that's beyond our control. It doesn't mean that we don't pay attention to that. The pandemic is beyond our control. Patriarchy is beyond our control. Racism is beyond our control. All these things are happening, yes, and we pay attention to that. But when you're grounded in your spiritual discipline, or whatever grounding technique, right? We're using spiritual discipline as one. You can then continue to move by faith because you're anchored and grounded in the Lord, that despite what's happening around you, you continue to move and navigate and flow with God. And therefore you have balance, right? Balance is ever evolving. It's not static. So my encouragement for someone who is trying to start up their business, or don't know what their gift is or what have you, start with the creator of all gifts, right? Get yourself grounded and anchored. Get yourself grounded in a spiritual discipline. Let the Lord speak to you, and then do it scared. Do it scared. Lydia did it scared. Simone did it scared. Pastor Tammy did it scared. Minister Dee did it scared. Minister Kenneth did it scared. Hazel did it scared. Do it scared, and know that the Lord is either going to give you wings to fly or a soft place to land. Either way, you're in his hands.
That's good. That's so you're saying see about the Father's business, and then he'll help you see about yours.
He
So that
he
you can
he will
allow
help you see
yourself.
about yours. He will help you do yours. He will
Yes.
prosper yours. He will expand yours. Keep God in the center of your business because you're doing his.
Brother Lawrence taught us in the book, Dr. Williams showed us, is practice the presence of God right where you are. Just start where you are. Be concerned, but don't be consumed. And see about the Father's business, and he'll help you see about yours as you use it to advance the kingdom. I hear you. I hear you, Minister Hazel.
Yes, yes. That was some good
That's
nuggets
real
that
life
she
testimony.
just dropped. And I like that, Minister Hazel, about the move by faith. And when you were talking about the move by faith, Lydia, actually, when they talk about that, originally with that color purple, and it came from the sea snails. And so when you think about the fact that those that might be out here that are trying to be entrepreneurs, sometimes you might feel like you're moving at a snail pace that's happening. And that's exactly what she was experiencing, but she had to be at the snail pace first. But she was continuing what? Operating in faith, believing in something, believing that she could be a business owner. And so while it might not be going at the pace that you wanted to go at, but once she was able to experience being with the sea snails and being able to get that purple dye and being able, while it might have been labor intensive, she was able to leave there, purchase her franchise, and establish her business in Philippi. And so we have to understand it. But once she established it, she didn't forget where she came from. This business belongs to God. It is for God's glory. It is for God's edification. And so oftentimes people will come over to Engaging Solutions, and they might go in the break room, and we order words of the day that is spread out in our break room. Why? Because it is for God's glory, so that seeds can be planted in someone else. We give back 10% of our net proceeds. Why? Because we're tithing on what God has given unto us. And so we have to remember, and that's what Lydia did. She remembered that at one point she was going with the snails, and then God kept increasing, kept giving her more faster pace. And when she got there, and even while she was laboring at that speed, she was still for God's glory. To God be the glory. And we have to make sure, as practitioners, as we're in the marketplace, as true Christians in the marketplace, that we understand our responsibility to honor God with our business. We have to honor him with our business. And that means that we have to operate in a spirit of excellence, because that's the God that we serve. And as we operate in that spirit of excellence, that means that we know God. And then those fruits of the Spirit come out. And so people will know, man, they were really kind. That customer service was above what we were expecting. Why? Because now you are a practitioner of his Spirit. You're a practitioner of his Spirit.
Ooh, that's good. All of that you all said, because I love what you lifted. You said it was labor intensive. So when you look at that, and from the aspect of women as vessels of life, to be able to birth, to manifest, to be labor intensive. And the thing about it, that she stuck with it. And like you said, at the pace God had her going, that it was all design and purpose. And then understanding that what she had, because purple cloth was of value, that was rare. And that she did not compromise what she was making, what she was committed to, what God was using to supply her with, to be able to have resources that as she developed it and gave it, what it was able to give back to us was beyond monetary value.
That's right.
Back to us in ministry because of Lydia. And that's why that is why her seed then became a reflection of the ministry. I think, listen, Pastor Paul, and I think Lydia is a model member even. when you think about it in the context of contemporary conversation, she's a
Mhm.
model member from a model ministry. And that what was in her came out and was reflected then in the church and is recorded in the word. So you know it's fact and truth in Bible because it said it was the most liberal giving, one of the most generous churches. That gotta be in your people. You can teach it all day long, but for it to be in your people, it's going to be a reflection then on the ministry. And we talk about then being a model member then of a model ministry because of the things that you all are speaking of. When you do it as spiritual practice, when it's at the core of who you are in your business, and then when you do it in excellence, this is where I'm going to hand off to Pastor Ken, to Minister Ken, to take it home. Talk to us when you look at it in all of these jewels that these ladies have dropped. Let's go right there with model member, model ministry, and then in the context of how do you then use your business to glorify God, your occupation meeting your vocation, your every being then as a Christian, as a believer with your business, and it being a blessing.
Hey man, wow. It's kind of hard to follow behind all that, but I think what comes to mind is
I'm
this
sorry.
Friday, this Friday I buried my mother 14 years ago. And I got to the service. It was at our childhood church at the Calvary Baptist Church. And the preacher, in an attempt to give us a word, comforting word to our family, he preached a sermon called Just Do It. Now, I was a little mad in my flesh because I said, man, this is my mama. She's been slaving in this church for years, and that's all you got. But then the Holy Spirit once again arrested me. He said, that just do it. That's exactly what was her life. She took care of her father, who had dementia in all times with no vehicle, still working full time. She served in the choir, still working. She gave faithfully. She just did it. So my word of encouragement to the woman out there that is a Lydia in the making that wants to start that business, just do it. If you glorify God with your life, God will bless you while eyes have not seen, ears have not heard. It hasn't entered into the hearts of man the things that the Lord has prepared for you if you just do it.
Somebody say, just do it.
Just do it.
Tell somebody, just do it. That's good, sir. Y'all if you have your copies, lift them up. Lift them up. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you, sir. Great women of the Bible, contemporary conversations. This has been Team Lydia on tonight. We appreciate this opportunity. And for all of those that are viewing, that have joined in on our conversation, and all of those throughout the month, I don't know where we are in the flow, be it before, after us, or even now, we appreciate you. Shout out to Mount Carmel Church. You all are amazing. Dr. Williams, we thank you for your leadership in the community.
Happy birthday to him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Mount Carmel as well. And for we thank you for just doing it with the Bible is Black History Institute. This is so necessary, particularly in necessary times. So we appreciate you. We celebrate you. We thank you for elevating the Lydia in us and in our lives, and all of the great women that are in this book. And I can't wait to get into the other conversations. So thank you again to Simone, Reverend Simone Wells, to Minister Hazel Owens, to Pastor Tammy Renee Butler, to Minister Kenneth Allen. I thank you all. I salute you. I appreciate you. I thank God for his connection with you in community and fellowship in ministry. I love you all dearly. And I thank you again, Dr. Williams, for this opportunity to serve on tonight. I'm Minister Deidre D. Gray, Kingdom Solution. And we bless you. We honor you. And we ask that you would share this video. Make sure you share this information about Bible is Black History Institute. Make sure you get your copy. Buy one for you. Buy one for somebody else. And stay connected with the Bible is Black History Institute. We love you. Be encouraged. Be well. Be safe. God bless.
Thank you for joining us for this contemporary conversation about Lydia, one of the great women of the Bible. Tune in next Tuesday at 7 p.m. as the Bible is Black History Institute 2021 continues our conversation on Mary, Mother of Jesus. God bless and have a blessed week.